In today's hyper-connected world, our lives are increasingly digitized. From online shopping to social media, our personal information is scattered across the digital landscape. And so being aware of our privacy is crucial because it's the first line of defense against potential misuse and exploitation. Cyber threats, data breaches, and invasive practices comprise substantial risks. Understanding and actively managing our privacy helps safeguard sensitive information, maintain control over our digital identities, and ensures that the online world respects our boundaries. It's not just about protection, it's about asserting our rights and maintaining a balance between the benefits of technology and the preservation of personal autonomy. Your personal information is valuable, and it deserves your attention. In these short video explainers, we'll be taking a look at the primary building blocks that regulators in the EU have put in place to help protect your data through the GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation. As you can see from this overview, we will be addressing a number of questions. For example, what is personal data and what is not? What does it mean when we say that a company is processing our personal data? Who are the most relevant players in the EU privacy ecosystem? And how can individuals ensure that their privacy rights are respected? But first, let's ask ourselves why we need a privacy framework in the first place. Why is privacy important, and why does it need to be legally protected? The more you use the internet and apps on each of your devices, the more your digital fingerprint grows. This is because each of your digital activities is tracked and recorded by companies and organizations who rely on your personal information to understand consumer behavior, preferences, and trends. This information helps them tailor products, services, and marketing strategies to meet consumer needs. For businesses, your data is a roadmap to success. They use it to enhance user experiences, target specific audiences, and ultimately boost their bottom line. Advertisers, for example, can create more effective campaigns by analyzing your online behavior and preferences. On the flip side, the usage of this valuable resource comes with a number of risks. Unauthorized access or misuse of personal data can lead to privacy invasions, identity theft, and other cybercrimes. Ultimately, we have no control over how our own data is collected, used, or shared by corporations, and as a result, we lose our personal autonomy. Moreover, unwanted data collection or sharing can happen without our explicit consent and can even be used against us to manipulate our choices, preferences, and beliefs. That's where regulations such as the GDPR are required to step in, to strike a balance between leveraging the economic benefits of personal data usage and protecting individuals' privacy. The GDPR is designed to ensure responsible and lawful processing by organizations and ultimately to provide individuals with control over their personal data. So what is personal data, and when is the GDPR protected? According to the GDPR, personal data is any piece of information that relates to you as a person. This includes not only obvious identifiers like your name, address, ID card details, or credit card number, but also information such as your live location or your IP address. A work email address, which includes your name, is also considered personal data. In order for the protection of the GDPR to apply to you, your personal data must be processed. This means that personal data must undergo any type of operation, including the collection, recording, storage, alteration, or sending of personal data. Processing even includes the deletion of your personal data. In simpler terms, any action taken with your personal data from its initial collection to its final disposal is considered data processing under the GDPR. This is to ensure that it covers a wide range of activities to safeguard individuals' privacy and provide them with control over how their personal information is handled by organizations. To give you an example of when your personal data is being processed, imagine you're scrolling through your favorite online streaming service and it recommends movies or shows tailored just for you. Behind the scenes, the platform's personalized recommendation system analyzes your viewing history, preferences, and even the genres you tend to avoid. Through sophisticated algorithms, it processes this information to predict what you might enjoy next, and then presents it to you as one of multiple viewing options. Or let's say you're shopping for a pair of shoes online. As you browse, the website collects and processes your personal data in various ways. If you have an account, the site will process your login credentials, shipping address, and payment details. The website also analyzes your browsing behavior, what products you view, how long you stay on a particular page, and if you add items to your virtual shopping cart. If you've set preferences such as shoe size or preferred brands, the site processes this information as well to tailor recommendations to your personal needs. While it enhances your user experience, it also highlights the intricacies of personal data processing, turning raw data into tailored suggestions. These scenarios illustrate how companies leverage your personal data to create more personalized and engaging services. However, it also underscores the importance of responsible data handling to maintain user trust and privacy. For this reason, some of your personal data requires an even higher level of protection because of its sensitive nature. The GDPR calls these types of information special categories of personal data or sensitive personal data. These categories include racial or ethnic origin, political opinions, religious or philosophical beliefs, as well as genetic, biometric, or health data. In addition to the standard requirements for processing such personal data, the GDPR imposes stricter conditions of the processing of these special categories of personal data to ensure a higher level of protection. Such data can typically only be processed by companies when you explicitly consent to it. And so one must be careful when companies ask you for these types of personal data. However, because explicit consent can always be revoked, you can change your mind later and ask companies to stop processing your sensitive personal data. But more about that later. Let's move on to discuss who the primary actors are in this privacy ecosystem. Under the GDPR, there are three primary entities involved. At the center of this ecosystem is the data controller. This is the person or entity that determines why a particular data processing operation is being undertaken and how this operation is to be carried out. This is most often the company that you are interacting with to buy a product or service. For example, Amazon when you're buying your Christmas presents. The second relevant entity is the so-called data processor, who only processes personal data on behalf of the controller and according to the controller's instructions. This could be any third party that Amazon is employing to deliver a product or service to you. For example, a data processor could be Stripe, the payment service provider used on Amazon.com to pay with your Visa card. Another example is the DHL delivery service that hands you your package. The third actor involved in this ecosystem is known as the data subject. That's you, the individual whose personal data is being processed. Let's take a look at each of these actors in closer detail. As we've said, the data controller is at the center of the European privacy framework. This is due to the fact that the responsibility to fulfill the GDPR's obligations is imposed on the controller. This means that they are accountable for safeguarding your privacy rights through the data processing lifecycle. And so, when something goes wrong and your privacy rights are infringed, it is the controller who must bear the burden of paying a fine. In our earlier example, this is Amazon. But the controllers are not the only players in the game who collect your personal data. Some companies may not collect your information from you directly, but still process your data when it's instructed to do so by the controller. These companies are known as the data processors. These entities are hired by organizations to carry out specific tasks in relation to the processing of personal data. Typical examples of such companies include cloud service providers, IT support companies, and other outsourced firms hired by controllers to perform certain tasks in which they specialize. In our earlier example, this would be Stripe or DHL. And finally, there's the so-called data subject. Unlike controllers or processors, which are most often companies, the data subject is a living, breathing individual whose personal data is being processed. Provided that these individuals are identifiable, the GDPR grants data subjects specific rights and protections regarding the processing of their personal data, empowering them to have more control and transparency over their information. Whether it's a customer, an employee, or an individual whose data is in question, they are considered a data subject under the GDPR. To illustrate how these entities are identified in practice, let's consider an example in the context of an online fitness app. The company which runs the fitness app decides to process personal data collected through its app, such as user profiles, workout history, and health information to personalize its service for each user. This company therefore determines why and how the data is processed, and as such is considered the data controller. The fitness app company decides to use a third-party cloud service provider to store and process user data securely. The cloud service provider in this scenario would be considered the data process, as they handle the technical aspect of data storage and processing as instructed by the controller. Finally, the individual using the fitness app is the data subject. This user provides personal information including fitness goals, health metrics, and workout preferences which the controller collects and processes. Because it is their personal data being processed, the GDPR grants the data subject certain rights, for example, to access, control, and request the deletion of their personal data. The final topic we'll address in this video series is that of data subject rights, which are granted to individuals such as yourself regarding the process of personal data, and which can be exercised against controllers who process such data unlawfully. The GDPR's data subject rights are crucial as they empower you with control, transparency, and protection over your personal information. These rights ensure that people such as yourself can access, rectify, and when necessary, erase information about themselves, thereby promoting privacy, trust, and accountability in the digital age. Let's take a closer look at some of the data subject rights which find expression most frequently in practice. When you sign up for a service or buy a product online, companies have an obligation to provide you with certain types of information. For example, they need to tell you who is processing your data and why, which data is being processed and for how long, as well as who might receive this data. Companies also need to present this information to you in a concise and easily accessible way, using clear and plain language. Let's be honest, no one wants to read complicated terms and conditions using complex legal language. Instead, companies are encouraged to use short sentences, visuals, and examples to help you understand how your data is being processed. When a company holds information about you, you're entitled in some circumstances to exercise your right to erasure, also known as the right to be forgotten. This means that you can ask a company to delete any information about you that they may possess. If you withdraw your consent, if the personal data is no longer needed for the purpose for which it was processed, or if the data is processed unlawfully, you have the power to hit the delete button. Not only does the company need to delete your data, they are also obliged to take reasonable steps to inform third-party companies processing such data that you have exercised your right. Imagine you're a recent graduate student with aspirations for a professional career, but you realize that you still have some old and embarrassing photographs from your college days on social media. In such case, you can submit a request to the social media platform to delete the photos in question, and in so doing, curate your online presence and present yourself in the best light for future career opportunities. If you find out that certain information about you is incorrect or incomplete, you can exercise your right to rectification by asking the data controller to correct your data. Once you've done that, they are required to do so in at least 1 month or justify in writing why they can't comply with your request. In addition, controllers are required to inform third parties who hold the incorrect data that you've exercised your right to rectification. Finally, controllers must notify you of the fact that your data has been corrected. While the rectification of incorrect data might seem trivial, it can have significant legal effects. To illustrate, let's say a bank thinks that you owe your landlord rent, but you've already won a legal battle against your landlord. In such scenario, you can demand that the bank fix this information so that it doesn't put you at a disadvantage when applying for a loan in the future. The right to object grants individuals such as yourself the ability to oppose the processing of personal data in certain situations and to stop that processing altogether. This right allows you to express your disagreement with or protest against the processing of your personal data for specific purposes. When this right is available to data subjects, controllers must inform them about their right to object, at the latest at the time of the first communication. Because decisions made about your personal data can have serious consequences, you have the right not to be subject to automated decision making. This right applies when decisions with legally or similarly significant effects are made solely through automated processing without meaningful human involvement. In other words, when decisions regarding your personal data are made which have serious effects, you have the right for a human to be involved in the decision-making process, as opposed to an AI system, for example. Imagine you apply for a loan online and the bank utilizes an automated system to assess your creditworthiness. Such loan application is processed through an automated system that considers various factors like credit history, income, and debt. The system, without having any human intervention, decides to deny the loan based on predetermined criteria. Upon learning about such decision, you can request a human to review your application and provide additional information and context. In such case, the bank will have to assign a loan officer to manually review your application, taking into account a more nuanced assessment and giving you a proper opportunity for your application to be considered. And with that, we conclude this short video series. Thank you for diving into the intricacies of the GDPR legal concepts and rights with me today. If you have any questions or want to explore specific topics further, consult Profila.com, where you can also learn how we can assist you in exercising your data subject rights. Until next time, happy navigating through the GDPR landscape.